Hello friends, and welcome back to the Scale Model Pursuit. Today's video is the first of the PBY Catalina series, in which I'm going to take you through the entire build process, and I'm really excited about how this model turned out, so can't wait to take you through that whole process, and hopefully you'll learn a couple tips and tricks and pick up on a couple techniques. So be sure to like and subscribe, and I really do appreciate your support. Let's see if we can get this video to 300 likes. That would really help me out. So as we dive into this, I wasn't sure what to expect from this kit. It's a little bit older Academy 172 scale kit. The instructions here are obviously very basic, which is fine, but I was impressed by some of the details on the kit itself. To see recessed panel lines and rivets was a nice surprise, because I, again, didn't know what to expect with this kit. I've never seen it before. It was just available at my local hobby store, and I thought, you know what, this is one of my favorite airplanes from World War II, so I'm going to go ahead and give it a shot. The clear parts were a little bit thick. Some of the newer kits have a little bit thinner clear parts, but really nice looking and very clear. I've got some Edward masks to help with the clear parts on this, because as you can see, there's a lot of little windows on this aircraft. The wings looked beautiful, and I love the fabric detail that they've added into their molds. That'll be fun when it comes time to paint, give it some character. Right out of the gate, I got the two halves of the fuselage prepped. As soon as I started looking at the inside, I noticed there's not much detail right around where those nice bubble canopies are, so that's gonna need a little extra detail in there. Here I'm just trying to sand down some of the ejector pin marks. I'm just filling them with a little bit of Vallejo plastic putty. The nice thing about the plastic putty is you can actually use water to clean it up before it hardens, and it makes the sanding a little bit easier later. Here I'm using a little bit of evergreen polystyrene board to add some of those interior details, like filling out the gun mount. I just cut out some triangular shaped pieces and got them glued in just to fill in that void there. And then also cut some strips of the same board to add some of the structural ribbing that you would see in reference photos. So this was actually a lot of fun, because I could just kind of look at a reference photo, cut up the little pieces, glue them in, and kind of make it my own. Decided to cut some thinner strips to represent some of the smaller structural pieces that run between the larger structural members. At this point, I'm thinking this is going to look really good once it's painted, and add just a little bit of character inside the aircraft. This part here I'm gluing in closes out the landing gear bay, and it's only used for the wheels up configuration, which I wanted to do because what if we decide to do a diorama in the future where maybe this is in a epoxy water diorama. It's important to lay down a primer, and here I'm using black to unify the color, and then I'm going to put down this alclad aluminum as the base for my chipping effect. Once the aluminum is down and dried, we're going to add a chipping medium by diluting it about 50-50 with water and then doing a final mix in the airbrush paint cup. Putting down a couple of thin layers and letting them dry in between will allow for a successful removal of the top colored paint. So here we're going with zinc chromate over the chipping fluid. Once this is dry, we'll be able to add a little bit of water to the surface, and then that top zinc chromate will chip right off. While I'm at it, I'm getting the wheel wells and some other areas of the interior, along with some of the other detailed parts. All of these parts already have the chipping fluid applied. Now, I did make a mistake on some of these parts. I didn't prime them first with the black primer, and so when I went to use the chipping technique, both the aluminum color and the zinc chromate came off. So you'll see in a minute I had to go ahead and use like a brush chipping method. This is where we just wet the airbrush needle or a toothpick and re-wet the surface, and you can see the top layer of paint chips off. Leaves a nice effect. Here I opted to use a paintbrush chipping method. I'm using a 10/0 natural fiber brush, and gives you a lot of control with that fine of a brush, and the long bristles will hold a decent amount of paint so that it doesn't dry out on you. Here I'm just fine-tuning it and getting it to that final amount of wear and weathering that I wanted to achieve. With the wheels up configuration, I had to do a couple of modifications to the landing gear. Here I'm adding a post made out of a piece of the excess sprue and then another piece of polystyrene board to create kind of a gusset or a support structure for it. That way we'll be able to glue this compressed landing gear into the wheel well bay, and it'll have a nice surface for the glue to bond. After bonding the wheel on, now I can do a little bit of a fit check. The tire on the actual aircraft would stick out just a little bit. Here I've got it coming out too far, so after a final trim and one more fit check, should be good to go here. This is a Vallejo part picker, which came in very handy for some of the smaller clear parts. It just has a little silicone tip on it and it sticks to just about anything. Pretty cool little tool. This is a 50-50 mix of Tamiya panel liners, black and brown. So this creates a nice enamel pin wash that will highlight all the recessed areas and details. And it also creates kind of a dirty, weathered effect on the larger surfaces. Because the zinc chromate is acrylic paint, we can use this enamel wash and it won't attack the acrylic paint below. So it's important to keep in mind the sequencing of which types of paints you're using so that you don't impact the layer below it. Understanding that sequencing when I was new to scale modeling was kind of confusing, so if you have any questions about that, please ask in the comments below. And in the members section, you'll have opportunities to ask questions like that and take a look at some of the tips and tricks and commentary I put in a little bit more detail. So please consider becoming a channel member. That area is pretty new. I just turned that feature on, so I'm starting to populate it, and I'm actually going to be treating it kind of like a scale modeling magazine where I post pictures and then describe in detail what I'm doing with topics like paint sequencing, washes, and how different thinners react with different paints. So I'll be using project updates before the videos come out to cover topics like that. So I'm pretty excited about it, and I hope you enjoy it too. So whenever there's an opportunity to remove paint between two pieces of plastic coming together to be bonded, I try to do it. And in this case, it was pretty simple. I was able to just use some Vallejo airbrush cleaner and dissolve that paint right along the edge. Whenever I bond the larger clear plastic parts, I try to use PBY glue wherever possible because it dries crystal clear and it doesn't melt the plastic. So being water-based, you can actually come back with a moistened Q-tip or paintbrush and clean up the excess glue. Here I'm using Revell Contacta on the larger surfaces to glue the wing halves together, and this ensures that I'm going to get a good amount of glue down into that seam. And once the parts are together, I usually come back with a thin glue, either Tamiya Ultra Thin or in this case Mr. Cement S, and that thin glue actually wicks into the joint and gives you a really nice complete bond there. Okay, with the plane together and masked off, we are ready for paint. So please join me for part 2, where we're gonna do a multicolor scheme. You probably saw in the thumbnail, the paint job turned out really good on this. And so I'm excited to get the next video out. So please like and subscribe and consider becoming a channel member. It's down in the description, and I really appreciate it. And just so you know, like I said before, Mach 2 Plus members get project updates with photos and commentary, and it's being designed as like almost like a modeling magazine. So I'm really excited about it. Take care, God bless, and until then, blessings on your pursuits. See you next time.